The first warning came as a whisper, barely a tremor in the vast darkness of space. Dr. Samira Okoro's research station hung suspended above a forgotten planetary system, its advanced sensors humming with an unusual energy. She had dedicated her entire career to studying the remnants of lost civilizations, collecting fragments of knowledge from worlds long since turned to cosmic dust. Something was different today. The holographic displays flickered, casting ethereal blue light across her workspace. Hundreds of data streams cascaded like luminous waterfalls, each line of information representing millennia of accumulated scientific knowledge. Her fingers moved instinctively across the quantum interface, tracing patterns that seemed to dance and shift with a life of their own. A low-frequency pulse emerged from the background radiation, almost imperceptible at first. Most scientific instruments would have missed it entirely. But Samira's custom-built monitoring system, cobbled together from salvage technology of a dozen extinct alien civilizations, caught the anomaly immediately. "Computer," she called out, her voice steady despite the growing tension. "Analyze the quantum signature of the recent radiation burst." The station's artificial intelligence responded with clinical precision, detecting unprecedented quantum destabilization. Wavelength patterns do not correlate with any known cosmic event in our database. Recommendation: immediate comprehensive scan of local galactic sector. Samira leaned closer to the holographic display. Her dark eyes reflected the cascading streams of data, catching subtle variations that most researchers would have overlooked. Years of studying vanished civilizations had taught her to recognize the smallest signs of systemic collapse. Outside the research station's protective energy shield, the star system looked deceptively peaceful. Distant planets continued their ancient orbits, unaware of the invisible wave of destruction gathering momentum. But Samira knew better. She had seen this before, the subtle precursors of total cosmic dissolution. Her communication array suddenly burst to life, filling the station with a cacophony of urgent transmissions. Research outposts, deep space monitoring stations, and scientific vessels from multiple star systems were reporting similar anomalies. Quantum entanglement networks were experiencing unprecedented disruptions. Communication pathways that had remained stable for centuries were fragmenting like delicate glass. "This is different," Samira muttered, more to herself than to the station's artificial intelligence. "This isn't just another stellar event." She accessed her personal database, a meticulously curated collection of research spanning multiple alien civilizations. Holographic reconstructions of long-lost worlds materialized around her, each a ghostly testament to species that had once reached for the stars and then vanished without a trace. The quantum burst intensified. First, it was just a slight shimmer at the edge of a distant star system. Then, like a wave of invisible entropy, entire planetary clusters began to dissolve. Not through explosion or gradual decay, but through a process that defied current scientific understanding. Entire worlds simply disappeared, their atomic structures unraveling with mathematical precision, leaving behind nothing but a cold, empty void. Samira's hands moved with practiced efficiency, initiating emergency protocols and beginning to compile data. Her research had prepared her for extreme scenarios, but nothing could have truly readied her for this moment. Quantum dissolution progression, the station's computer announced, increasing at exponential rate. Current projection indicates complete galactic sector destabilization within 72 standard hours. The implications were staggering. This wasn't just the end of a civilization or a star system. This was the potential end of everything. As if sensing her thoughts, the quantum display pulsed with an almost living energy. Complex mathematical patterns emerged and dissolved, revealing glimpses of something profound and terrifying. Whatever was happening transcended current scientific comprehension. Samira took a deep breath, her mind already racing with possibilities. She knew that in moments like these, conventional wisdom would be useless. The solution, if one existed, would require something entirely different. Something human. The first wave of cosmic dissolution continued to spread, silent and merciless, consuming everything in its path. And in her small research station, Dr. Samira Okoro prepared to unravel the greatest mystery of the universe. The archive chamber hummed with an eerie silence, its quantum-preserved memory banks stretching far beyond human comprehension. Samira moved carefully between holographic displays, each one a window into the final moments of civilizations long forgotten. Her protective suit interfaced with the alien technology, translating centuries of accumulated knowledge into comprehensible data streams. This wasn't just a research facility. It was a graveyard of cosmic ambitions. The chamber existed in a pocket dimension, carefully maintained by an automated preservation system that had outlived its creators by countless millennia. Every civilization that had encountered this archive had failed to unlock its full potential. Humans were the first to even come close to understanding its true complexity. A subtle vibration caught her attention. One of the memory crystals, a storage medium so advanced it could preserve information at the quantum level, began to pulse with an unusual rhythm. Samira approached slowly, her specialized interface gloves hovering just above the crystalline surface. "Computer," she called softly, "initiate full-spectrum analysis." The holographic interface erupted with layers of information, genetic maps, technological progression charts, and extinction event records, cascaded around her like a three-dimensional waterfall of knowledge. But something was different this time. Hidden within the layers of data, a pattern emerged. Subtle at first, then increasingly obvious. Every advanced civilization shared an identical weakness. The genetic records told a story of spectacular rise and inevitable fall. Species after species had reached incredible technological heights, only to encounter a fundamental limitation that became their ultimate downfall. Some had discovered faster-than-light travel, others had mastered energy manipulation at the quantum level. But each civilization hit the same insurmountable barrier: genetic inflexibility. Each species had evolved to perfection within its specific environment, creating sophisticated but ultimately rigid biological and cultural systems. Their very strength became their ultimate weakness. They could adapt only within extremely narrow parameters, their evolutionary paths locked into predictable patterns. Except for humans. The alien research logs about humanity were unlike any other species' records. Where other civilizations' files contained precise, mathematically predictable data, the human entries were chaotic, unpredictable, almost nonsensical. Researchers from advanced civilizations had documented human behavior with a mixture of confusion and reluctant admiration. One particularly old log caught her attention. It was from the Zorn Collective, a civilization that had studied galactic species for millions of years. The translation algorithm struggled with parts of the text, but the core message was clear. Humans defy categorization, biological adaptation rate, unprecedented, cultural evolution, non-linear, predictive models, consistently fail, recommendation, continued observation with extreme caution. Samira couldn't help but smile. What other species had been described with such bewilderment? She dove deeper into the archives. Each civilization's final moments told a similar story. Faced with an existential threat, they relied on established protocols, mathematical models, and carefully developed strategies. And each time, those very strategies became their tomb. Humans, by contrast, seemed to thrive on chaos. Their history was a testament to solving problems through creativity, improvisation, and a fundamental ability to think beyond established boundaries. Where other species saw limitations, humans saw challenges to be overcome. The memory crystal began to pulse more intensely. Additional layers of information emerged: hidden protocols, suppressed research notes, fragments of theories that had been considered too radical to explore. Each piece added to a growing picture of human potential that went far beyond physical or technological capabilities. It wasn't just about survival, it was about transformation. Samira realized she was looking at more than just an archive. This was a blueprint, a cosmic instruction manual that previous civilizations had been unable to read. Humans weren't just another species in the galactic catalog. They were something entirely different. A wild card, an anomaly. the universe's unexpected solution. As the quantum dissolution continued to spread across the cosmos, this archive stood as a testament to a potential salvation, and Samira was determined to understand why humans might be the key to stopping it. The memory crystal pulsed one final time, as if acknowledging her presence. In that moment, she knew their journey was just beginning. The emergency assembly chamber defied conventional design, borrowed technology from a dozen extinct civilizations, created a workspace that looked more like an abstract art installation than a scientific hub. Holographic interfaces flickered with data streams from across the known universe, each display representing the last vestiges of species on the brink of total extinction. Samira stood at the center of controlled chaos. Around her gathered the most remarkable collection of minds ever assembled. Survivors from civilizations that had once considered each other mortal enemies now worked shoulder to shoulder, united by a single desperate purpose. The quantum dissolution was consuming everything, and traditional methods of scientific inquiry had failed spectacularly. Dr. Zara Nakamura, a quantum systems specialist from the remnants of the Eastern Galactic Confederation, adjusted her neural interface with practiced efficiency. Her cybernetic implants hummed softly, processing information at speeds that would have driven a standard biological brain to complete failure. Beside her, Professor Krell, one of the last surviving members of the quantum harmonics research team, looked decidedly uncomfortable. "We've analyzed the dissolution pattern from 17 different perspectives," Krell announced, his multi-jointed fingers manipulating a holographic data construct. "Each approach fails. The entropy increase defies every known scientific principle." A young researcher named Alex Chen leaned forward, his eyes reflecting an intensity that made the older scientists uncomfortable. Where they saw insurmountable obstacles, he saw a puzzle waiting to be solved. "What if?" Alex began, his voice cutting. "Through the background hum of complex machinery, we're looking at this entirely wrong." The room fell silent. Generations of scientific protocol demanded respect for established research methodologies. But these were not ordinary times. With the universe literally dissolving around them, traditional approaches had become a luxury they could not afford. Samira nodded, encouraging him to continue. Alex's hands moved across the holographic interface, pulling apart the dissolution data in ways no one had considered. Patterns emerged, chaotic, unpredictable, but with a subtle underlying rhythm that most researchers would have dismissed as random noise. "Every previous approach," Alex explained, "has tried to fight the dissolution using linear problem-solving, mathematical models, predictive algorithms, energy containment protocols. But what if the solution isn't about stopping the process? What if it's about understanding its fundamental nature?" Professor Krell looked skeptical. "And how do you propose we do that?" The young researcher's smile was both brilliant and slightly mischievous. By embracing the chaos, he began to demonstrate, pulling apart the dissolution data and reassembling it in a way that seemed to defy logical scientific reconstruction. Where other researchers saw destruction, Alex saw a complex dance of quantum potential. His approach was less about fighting the cosmic event and more about understanding its underlying language. The alien scientists exchanged worried glances. This was not how scientific research was supposed to work. Methodology, precision, established protocols. These were the foundations of their understanding of the universe. But those foundations were crumbling. Samira watched carefully. She had spent her entire career studying how civilizations approached existential challenges. The most advanced species invariably relied on their most sophisticated technologies. Humans, by contrast, had always found solutions through creativity, adaptability, and a willingness to challenge established thinking. "We need to redefine our understanding of the problem," she interjected, "not as a threat to be stopped, but as a system to be understood." The room buzzed with a mixture of hope and skepticism. Survivors from multiple civilizations, each with their own scientific traditions, each having watched their worlds die, now pinned their last hope on a small team of researchers who refused to accept the impossible. Alex continued to manipulate the data, his fingers dancing across quantum interfaces. Something was emerging, a pattern, a potential pathway through the cosmic dissolution that no one had seen before. "It's not about fighting," he muttered, more to himself than to the room. "It's about communication." Outside the research chamber, the universe continued to unravel, but for the first time since the quantum dissolution began, there was a spark of something unexpected. Hope. Darkness consumed everything. Not the darkness of night or shadow, but a fundamental erasure of existence. Star systems that had existed for billions of years simply vanished, their complex networks of planets, asteroids, and cosmic matter dissolving into pure quantum static. Communication networks that had once spanned entire galaxies collapsed faster than light could travel. The last remnants of galactic civilization watched in absolute horror. Samira's research station had become the final sanctuary of scientific hope. Quantum displays showed the progressive dissolution, a mathematically precise destruction that consumed entire sectors of space with terrifying efficiency. Each disappearing star system represented millions of years of evolutionary history. Countless civilizations, entire ecosystems, all reduced to nothing. 63% of mapped galaxies have now entered complete quantum dissolution, the station's artificial intelligence reported, its voice devoid of emotion. Projected total universal collapse. Approximately 17.4 standard time units. Around the central research platform, representatives from the last surviving civilizations moved like ghosts. Species that had once been bitter enemies now stood shoulder to shoulder, united by the most fundamental of fears. The Zorn Collective's crystalline ambassadors flickered with nervous energy. Quantum harmonic observers moved in synchronized patterns of pure energy. Biological and non-biological life forms alike shared one common expression: total desperation. Alex Chen worked furiously, his fingers moving across quantum interfaces that seemed to respond to his thoughts more than his physical touch. Holographic models of cosmic dissolution danced around him, each representation more complex than the last. Where other researchers saw only destruction, he saw a language waiting to be understood. "It's not random," he muttered, pulling apart data streams that would have driven lesser minds to complete breakdown. "There's a pattern, a communication." Dr. Zara Nakamura approached, her cybernetic implants processing information at speeds that defied biological limitation. "Our previous model suggested total entropic collapse was inevitable," she observed. "But your approach suggests something else entirely." The research station itself was a marvel of collaborative engineering. Borrowed technologies from a dozen extinct civilizations created a workspace that looked more like an abstract art installation than a scientific hub. Quantum interfaces, energy manipulation systems, and computational matrices that would have been impossible for any single species to create now worked in perfect harmony. Humanity's greatest strength had always been adaptation. Where other civilizations saw barriers, humans saw challenges to be solved. Professor Krell, one of the last surviving members of the quantum harmonic research team, approached the central platform. His multi-jointed form moved with a mixture of scientific curiosity and growing desperation. "We have exhausted every known scientific protocol," he announced, his translator rendering his complex language into human speech. "Mathematical models, energy containment protocols, quantum stabilization attempts, nothing works." Samira watched the dissolution maps carefully. Each disappearing sector told a story of potential, of complexity, of entire civilizations reduced to quantum static. But something was different. Hidden within the destruction, she could see the subtle hints of a pattern that defied conventional understanding. "We're looking at this wrong," she said quietly, her voice cutting through the background hum of complex machinery. "This isn't a destruction process, it's a transformation." The station fell silent. Alex's display suddenly erupted with a complex series of quantum patterns. Connections that no one had seen before began to emerge, subtle rhythms within the cosmic dissolution that suggested something far more profound than simple destruction. "It's a language," he said, his voice filled with a mixture of scientific excitement and growing understanding. "The universe is trying to communicate something, Outside, the research station, the darkness continued to spread. Entire galaxies disappeared in moments, their complex networks of stars and planets dissolving into pure quantum potential. But for the first time since the dissolution began, there was something else. A spark of hope. The last remnants of Galactic civilization leaned forward, watching carefully. Humanity's most unconventional researchers stood at the edge of understanding something that no species had ever comprehended before. The true nature of cosmic existence was about to be revealed. The moment of breakthrough came unexpectedly. Alex Chen sat in the research station's most isolated section, surrounded by a chaotic array of quantum interfaces and holographic projections. Half-empty nutrition packets and cold coffee cups littered his workspace, evidence of days without proper rest. Most of the other researchers had retreated to regeneration chambers, exhausted by the seemingly impossible challenge before them. But Alex couldn't sleep. Something about the dissolution patterns continued to pull at the edges of his consciousness. Every time he closed his eyes, mathematical sequences danced behind his eyelids. Connections that shouldn't exist began to form, subtle, almost imperceptible bridges between what was and what could be. He remembered an old story his grandmother used to tell, not a scientific treatise or a technical manual, but a simple narrative about solving problems by looking at them sideways. Where most researchers saw a wall, she had taught him to look for the cracks, the unexpected pathways. The holographic display flickered. Most scientific teams would have dismissed the anomaly, but Alex had learned that in moments of extreme complexity, the most valuable insights often came from the most unexpected places. He began to manipulate the dissolution data, not with the precision of established scientific method, but with an almost artistic approach. Patterns emerged, not linear patterns that previous researchers had sought, but complex breathing structures that seemed to pulse with a life of their own. The quantum dissolution wasn't a destructive force. It was a communication method far beyond current scientific understanding. Dr. Samira Okoro found him hours later, surrounded by a constellation of holographic models that defied traditional geometric principles. His workspace looked like the result of a collision between an art studio and a quantum physics laboratory. "What are you seeing?" she asked quietly. Alex's eyes burned with an intensity that made seasoned researchers uncomfortable. "It's not destruction," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "It's a language. A cosmic conversation happening at a scale we've never comprehended before." He pulled up a complex holographic model, where previous representations showed the dissolution as a linear process of destruction. Alex's model revealed something entirely different. Imagine a living, breathing network where information flowed not in straight lines, but in complex, multi-dimensional waves. Professor Krell, who had been observing silently, leaned forward. His advanced sensory organs detected something unprecedented in the holographic representation. "This defies everything we know about quantum mechanics," he observed. "Exactly," Alex responded. The breakthrough came from a moment of seemingly random inspiration. While other researchers had approached the cosmic dissolution with mathematical precision, Alex introduced an element of controlled chaos. He began to see the universal event not as a problem to be solved, but as a complex communication system waiting to be understood. Quantum researchers from multiple civilizations gathered around the display. Species that had spent millennia studying the universe found themselves confronted with an approach that challenged everything they understood about scientific investigation. "We've been trying to stop the dissolution," Alex explained, his fingers dancing across quantum interfaces. "But what if we're supposed to be listening to it?" The implications were staggering. Every previous approach had treated the cosmic event as a threat to be neutralized. Alex proposed something radical, that the dissolution was actually a message, a fundamental communication happening at a scale that transcended traditional understanding. Samira watched carefully. She recognized the look in Alex's eyes, the same spark of creativity that had allowed humans to survive countless challenges throughout their history. Where other species saw barriers, humans saw possibilities. The research station hummed with a new energy. Researchers from multiple civilizations began to adjust their approaches, influenced by Alex's unconventional thinking. Mathematical models were rewritten. Computational matrices were reconfigured. Something extraordinary was about to happen. Outside the research station, the cosmic dissolution continued its relentless progression. But now, for the first time, there was a sense that humanity might be on the verge of understanding something profound about the nature of existence itself. A message was waiting to be heard, and they were finally ready to listen. Construction of the quantum resonator defied every known principle of scientific engineering. Spread across the research station's primary assembly chamber, the device looked more like a living sculpture than a scientific instrument. Borrowed technologies from a dozen extinct civilizations intertwined in ways that would have driven traditional engineers to despair. Crystalline structures from the Zorn collective merged with energy conduits developed by the quantum harmonics. Biological neural networks created by species long since vanished now served as computational matrices. Alex Chen stood at the center of controlled chaos. "It's not about building a machine," he explained to the assembled researchers. "It's about creating a conversation." Dr. Samira Okoro watched carefully. She recognized the look of breakthrough that had characterized human innovation throughout history. Where other species saw insurmountable challenges, humans saw puzzles waiting to be solved. The quantum resonator was more than a device. It was a testament to human creativity. Professor Krell, one of the last surviving members of the advanced research team, looked decidedly uncomfortable. His multi-jointed form moved with a mixture of scientific curiosity and growing skepticism. "The computational requirements are beyond any known technological capability," he observed, his translation matrix rendering his complex language into human speech. Alex's response was a smile that spoke volumes. The device's core was a marvel of interdisciplinary engineering. Quantum interface modules created adaptive pathways that seemed to breathe with a life of their own. Energy conduits twisted in impossible geometric configurations, challenging fundamental understanding of physical space. "We're not trying to stop the dissolution," Alex explained, his fingers moving across quantum interfaces that responded to his thoughts more than physical touch. "We're trying to communicate with it." Each component of the quantum resonator told a story of collaborative survival. The crystalline memory banks came from a civilization that had mastered information storage at the molecular level. Neural network interfaces borrowed from species that had long since disappeared provided computational pathways unlike anything previously conceived. Dr. Zara Nakamura, her cybernetic implants processing information at speeds that defied biological limitation, adjusted a series of quantum stabilization matrices. "The energy requirements alone," she muttered, "should be impossible." But impossible had never been a limitation for humans. The device began to take shape. What looked like random assemblage to most researchers revealed a complex, almost organic, structure to those who understood. Each component seemed to communicate with the others, creating a system that was far more than the sum of its parts. "Traditional scientific approach would have us build a weapon," Alex said, tracing the device's complex energy pathways. "We're building a translator." Researchers from multiple civilizations watched in a mixture of horror and fascination. Species that had spent millennia developing advanced technologies found themselves confronted with an approach that defied everything they understood about scientific investigation. Professor Krell's sensors detected something unprecedented. "The computational matrix is creating adaptive pathways," he observed. "It's not just processing information, it's learning." Samira recognized the breakthrough for what it was. Humanity's greatest strength had always been adaptation. Where other civilizations saw barriers, humans saw challenges to be solved. The quantum resonator was more than a scientific instrument. It was a bridge between what was and what could be. The final components came together with a subtle harmonic resonance that seemed to vibrate beyond physical space. Energy conduits pulsed with a rhythm that suggested something more than mechanical function. It was almost as if the device was breathing. "Ready for initial activation sequence," Alex announced, His voice calm despite the magnitude of the moment. The research station fell silent. Researchers from multiple civilizations leaned forward. Holographic displays showed the cosmic dissolution continuing its relentless progression. Entire star systems continued to vanish, reduced to quantum static. But something was different now. Hope hung in the air. A fundamental belief that humans had always carried, that no challenge was truly impossible, that every problem had a solution waiting to be discovered. The quantum resonator hummed to life. The moment of activation was unlike anything the universe had ever witnessed. The quantum resonator came to life with a pulse that transcended traditional understanding of energy and matter. Holographic displays across the research station erupted, in a cascade of information so complex that most computational systems would have collapsed under the strain. Alex Chen stood at the epicenter, his eyes reflecting something beyond human comprehension. The cosmic dissolution, that relentless, force-consuming entire galaxies, suddenly paused, not stopped, not destroyed, but acknowledged. "It's listening," he whispered, his voice barely audible above the device's subtle harmonic resonance. Dr. Samira Okoro watched in absolute amazement. Researchers from multiple civilizations held their collective breath. The quantum resonator wasn't just a device. It was a translation mechanism, a bridge between destruction and understanding. Professor Krell's advanced sensory organs detected something unprecedented. The dissolution patterns began to shift, no longer a linear path of destruction but a complex multidimensional communication. Where previous observations showed only entropy, now there were hints of something else, a language of cosmic proportions. The research station became ground zero for the most significant scientific moment in universal history. Quantum interfaces began to translate what could only be described as a conversation, not in words, but in complex mathematical patterns that danced between destruction and creation. The device Alex had built was doing something no one thought possible. It was communicating with the fundamental fabric of universal existence. "We're not stopping the dissolution," Alex explained, his fingers moving across quantum interfaces that seemed to breathe with living intelligence. "We're understanding it." Entire star systems appeared and disappeared in rapid succession. But now, each dissolution carried meaning. Where before there was only destruction, now there was a complex dialogue happening at a scale that defied previous scientific understanding. Dr. Zara Nakamura's cybernetic implants worked overtime, processing information at speeds that would have driven a standard biological brain to complete failure. "The computational complexity," she muttered, "is beyond anything we've ever conceived." The quantum resonator pulsed with a rhythm that seemed to bridge multiple dimensions of existence. Energy conduits that borrowed technology from a dozen extinct civilizations created a network more complex than any single species could have imagined. It was a testament to collaborative survival, to the power of diverse thinking. Researchers watched in absolute wonder. The cosmic dissolution was transforming. No longer a force of pure destruction, it became a method of communication so profound that it challenged everything known about universal mechanics. Species that had spent millennia studying the cosmos found themselves confronted with a fundamental truth. They understood nothing. "It's not an end," Alex said, his voice cutting through the background hum of complex machinery. "It's a conversation." Holographic displays showed the most extraordinary scientific event in universal history. The dissolution wasn't destroying. It was reorganizing, transforming, creating something entirely new. Professor Krell's translation matrices worked furiously. "The fundamental language of existence," he translated, "is far more complex than any single species could comprehend." The research station became a beacon of hope. Humanity's most unconventional approach had done what millennia of scientific research had failed to achieve. They were not just observing the universe. They were communicating with it. Samira recognized the moment for what it was. Humans had always been different. Where other species saw barriers, humans saw possibilities. Where others saw destruction, humans saw opportunity for understanding. The quantum resonator continued its complex translation. Entire galaxies danced in and out of existence, each movement now carrying profound meaning. The dissolution was no longer a threat. It was a message waiting to be understood. As the final moments of the confrontation approached, something extraordinary became clear. This was not an ending. This was a beginning. The universe held its breath, waiting to see what would happen next. Silence filled the research station. Not the absence of sound, but a profound stillness that spoke of transformation beyond human comprehension. The quantum resonator hummed with a subtle energy that seemed to breathe with universal potential. Dr. Samira Okoro stood at the center of what would become the most significant moment in cosmic history. They had not stopped the dissolution. They had translated it. Alex Chen moved between holographic displays, his fingers tracing patterns of cosmic reconstruction that defied every previous understanding of universal mechanics. Researchers from multiple civilizations watched in a mixture of wonder and terror as entire galaxies reorganized themselves. "We're not destroyers," Alex explained, his voice calm despite the magnitude of what was happening. "We're translators." The universal transformation revealed something profound. What had appeared to be pure destruction was actually the most complex communication system ever conceived. Entire civilizations that had been consumed by the dissolution now existed in a state of quantum potential, not dead, not alive, but something entirely new. Professor Krell's advanced sensory organs detected layers of complexity that challenged everything he understood about existence. "The fundamental language of the universe," he translated, "is far more intricate than any single species could have imagined." Humanity had become more than just another species in the cosmic catalog. They were now the architects of universal renewal. Dr. Zara Nakamura's cybernetic interfaces processed the transformation, revealing patterns of reconstruction that defied linear understanding. Star systems that had been consumed now existed in a state of quantum possibility. Information, energy, and potential merged in ways that previous scientific models could never have predicted. The research station became a beacon of hope for every surviving civilization. Where other species had seen only destruction, humans had found a pathway to understanding. The quantum resonator was more than a scientific instrument. It was a bridge between what was and what could be, a translation device that spoke the language of universal potential. Samira watched carefully. She recognized this moment for what it was. The culmination of humanity's most profound characteristic: adaptability, creativity, the ability to see beyond established boundaries. Holographic displays showed the most extraordinary scientific event in universal history. The dissolution was not an ending. It was a transformation, a cosmic rebirth that challenged everything known about existence. "We're not just observing," Alex said quietly. "We're participating." Entire civilizations that had been consumed by the dissolution now existed in a state of quantum potential, not destroyed, not preserved, but transformed. Each moment of dissolution now carried meaning, each disappearance a complex communication of universal potential. The alien researchers began to understand something profound. Humanity's greatest strength had never been technological superiority. It was the ability to approach challenges with creativity, with a willingness to challenge established understanding. Professor Krell's translation matrices worked furiously. "The universe," he explained, "has been waiting for a species capable of understanding its true nature." Samira recognized the breakthrough for what it was. Humans had always been different. Where other species saw limitations, humans saw opportunities. Where others saw barriers, humans saw pathways to understanding. The final moments of transformation revealed something extraordinary. This was not an apocalypse. This was a conversation, a cosmic dialogue happening at a scale that transcended previous scientific understanding. The quantum resonator continued its complex translation, bridging impossible distances, connecting fundamental aspects of universal existence that had previously been incomprehensible. Researchers from multiple civilizations watched in absolute wonder. Species that had spent millennia studying the cosmos found themselves confronted with a fundamental truth. They understood nothing. Humanity had done what no other civilization could achieve. They had learned to listen. As the transformation continued, something became beautifully clear. The universe was not a collection of dead matter. It was a living, breathing system of communication and potential. And humans had become its most unexpected translators. The research station hummed with potential. Outside, the cosmos continued its extraordinary dance of transformation, and humanity watched, understood, and participated.